Well, hey, good morning. Thanks for stopping by. I have finally decided on a name for this show. And that name is Writing Science Fiction is Hard with James S. Aaron. I it's funny, they say you should just start recording and then, things will start coming together. And I guess that's what's happening here, like trying to figure out what exactly why I'm doing this, like what shape it needs to take, what things I want to do, and is it of value to other people? I think, primarily this is me setting some consistency with my week, and it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. Like I had a podcast for a long time, and I stopped doing the podcast because I kind of felt like I ran out of things to say a little bit, but it also coincided with that sort of difficult time in my life that I've been talking about when, my mom's dementia became very apparent and had some other health issues and family issues that came up. So it just became really hard to be in the right headspace to do that. And they always say, like, a lot of writers don't like to be writers, but they like to have written books, right? And I don't know that I want to be a YouTuber, but I would like to be able to look back and have made videos. um, and also, I still like podcasting. It's something I still enjoy doing. I had a radio show for a long time, and that was something I always enjoyed. Podcasting and doing videos is different than a radio show because you get feedback. That's the biggest thing that's always been different about the internet is you used to publish something in a magazine or in a newspaper and you would very rarely get feedback. Or if you did get a letter to the editor, like somebody was not happy with you, right? Um, but here, like somebody can respond right away and there can be kind of a back and forth, which is awesome. And that's a thing that I would like to do. Like, if I can keep this up for 5 years, I would love to look back and have 5 years of record of me consistently approaching my writing craft in a serious way. And so that's why I'm doing this. But then I don't always just like the idea of it's my name, it's the me show. Because I would like to like maybe interview people or do more book reviews or movie reviews or just talking about science fiction in general. I didn't say it's, writing speculative fiction is hard. Speculative is a hard word to say. My previous podcast was called Speculative Work, which was supposed to be a play on the idea of spec work, like not knowing if you're going to get paid or not. And then, speculative fiction. But then also, like, maybe I want to write fantasy someday or horror or mystery. I don't know. But science fiction just kind of gets right to the point, right? So that's what we're going to call it for now. And it really doesn't seem that it matters what you call something on YouTube. So maybe in the podcasting world, it matters a bit more. I mean, we'll keep the author name as part of it. So the other thing I've been messing around with is I'm calling this update. So this is a Monday update, which will come out on Tuesday. And it's funny, like the meaning of words, right? So should I call it an author diary? Should I call it an author check-in? Should I call it an author journal? Maybe all those words have different connotations and they lead to different clicks. And do I care about clicks? Like, no, I don't really care about clicks. I don't want to be part of clicks and I don't care about clicks. What I mean there is I don't want to get too hung up on words, but I would like to be consistent with it. So I'll probably continue calling it author journal. I think that is kind of what this is because it's me. A journal to me is more tracking of something, tracking progress, self-reflection, doing something that you are trying to get better at, right? And one of the things they used to say at Target is what isn't tracked cannot be improved, which I think is one of those 19th century ideas that came around when Marshall Fields was inventing retail and how to chew people into the ground. But I do think that's true to a certain extent. Like if you can't look back and see what you've done, it's very hard to know how you're going to move forward with where you're going. And it's also hard to know if you've actually been doing pretty good. Like you might look back and think you didn't accomplish anything. And then you realize, no, I actually did quite a bit, which is the story for me this week, which I'll get into. So I'll probably go forward with that. It just is funny to think about when you get into the specifics of words, right? And diary makes you think of I'm making some sort of confession or something emotional that I need to get out. And check-in just reminds me of like management, like, you know, hey Bob, we need to have a quick check-in. We need to have a quick status. That's what we should call it. Um, I hate the word status. Walk with me. Well, status. I've had people say that to me at work, and I've had to use that term at work. Not currently, so that I'm glad about that. So anyway, what's gone on the last week? It's actually been a pretty good week. Like I look back and think I didn't accomplish much, and I actually did. Um, Writing wise, I have not got quite as far as I wanted to, but I progressed from 84,000 words to now I'm just over 90,000 words with the current book, Lissa's Vengeance. And I'm really narrowing in on the end. I have to write a whole space battle, which is something that I had left in the earlier part of the book and then realized I just need to go back and do that. So I'm working on that right now. And I've been trying to kind of make it as realistic as possible, which takes time. And then after that, it's really just kind of mopping up some last chapters at the end. And I do want to do some kind of denouement because I don't like to just end on a cliffhanger, but we'll see what's going to happen there. And by denouement, if you're not familiar with that fancy French term, it basically is, okay, in a book, like you're building up to the rising action, right? The climax, the end of the story when hearts are pounding and we don't know if they're going to make it or not. And then typically there's a slide into the end. And if there's a cliffhanger, like this is why people are often unsatisfied with cliffhangers. Like you get to that top point where the tension is there and then it just cuts off, like, or they literally jump over a cliff. And that's not very satisfying for people unless the other book is like immediately available. And so a denouement would be like, we finished that climax. The characters have had a chance to get through that. And now they get a minute of rest. And so the reader gets a little bit of time with them while they kind of reset, recoup, make plans for what they're going to do. And then the end of the story could actually be them looking forward to where they're going to go. And that could be, in Star Wars terms, like the jump into hyperspace. So I prefer that. It's something that I really try to do more. I'm guilty of having done cliffhangers in the past and they just got me a lot of bad reviews. So, and I don't like to read it myself. Oftentimes if I did a cliffhanger, it was because I was up against a deadline and I'm not in this case. So I'm just not going to do that. So that's where I'm at with Lissa's Vengeance. And it does feel good to be really close. I got a lot of feedback on Retreat Hell and it seems like that book is going in the direction it needs to go. So I'm really happy about that. And because that was a book that was based on a lot of research that I did, especially on Afghanistan. And so it was kind of hard to synthesize a lot of that, but I guess it came together. So I'm happy about that. So let's get the cover in here. I signed, I got the editorial feedback on the story I wrote for the Running with Sharp Objects anthology that's coming up. If you're watching the video, there's a cool graphic here of the cover. And the whole idea with this one is it needed to be some sort of futuristic story that involved swords. And I had just come off Dungeon Crawler Carl and was interested in doing something that was kind of lit RPG. So I wrote a story that was sort of a frame story that's lit RPG where an operator needs to get some information. So he goes to visit a scientist in a memory care facility and everybody in the memory care is in VR, which is something that I think probably is going to happen. Like when my generation hits memory care, they're just going to plug us into Oculus Quests, right? And we'll be doing that. But anyway, this is a like near future with a lot better VR. And he basically enters into a game with him where they need to rebuild his memory in order to get some information they need to solve a problem in the future. And so it's called Core Memory Unlocked. And it also just, for me, had a lot of kind of emotional beats and I felt like I got it. I'm pretty happy with where that story went. It's a long story. It came out at just under like 10,100 words. Yeah, somewhere in there. But this is the kind of anthology that wants long. Like they wanted it to be like at least 7,000 words, and Chris Kennedy didn't want me going over 10,000 words that much, so I pushed it a little bit there. The only thing is I really didn't get any editorial feedback, and it came back with, line editing, and that was it. So I hope they liked it, and I guess I'll just need to watch the reviews to see if it hits anybody. Like, I hope it did me. So yeah, I'm excited about that. I signed the contract, and one thing I really like about Chris Kennedy and Theogony Publishing is he's really good about, sends out contracts. He's very upfront about what the payment is going to be. The thing about also like Chris Kennedy Publishing and Theogony, like they're pretty similar to a lot of other publishers that are out there right now. Like Athon Books is similar. Like they're not going to pay you in advance. Like you're going to get paid out of royalties after the book comes out. And the thing you always have to remember is that royalties, when it comes to an Amazon primary anthology or any kind of thing published on, Amazon, if it's in Kindle Unlimited, which this one will be, like you're getting paid by the page read, and then Amazon takes their cut, and then it depends on how the publisher does like the royalty split within the book. Raconteur Press, who is a relatively new, they do a ton of anthologies. They basically treat everyone involved with the anthology as like they all get an equal cut. So the publisher isn't taking a certain percentage and then dividing what's left or taking their costs out. So they might take the cost of the cover, the editing, everything else out of that, and then split what was left after those pieces are taken out, which might only at that point be, 30% among all of the contributors. And you never really know what that's going to be. So it's important to really understand that when you sell to or write something for this kind of anthology, like you're not really doing it for the money. I like Chris. I've met him several times. I feel like he's a good guy who does, really good work. And it's, I like that, to have that relationship. So, and I was also really grateful when I was offered, the opportunity to like upfront to write for the anthology. This was one that had he offered writers, and then they also had an open call. And as you can see from the cover, sorry if you're listening, but my name's on the cover as well. So that was super cool. And that's something I really wanted to write the best story I could do within this, this prompt. So I'm hoping I'll get invited back. And I enjoyed doing it. I felt like it was a story that I could definitely do more with in the future. And that's the other thing about the way Chris does these anthology contracts is you get the rights to the story back. And I was in the last anthology that he did that was in a similar vein, but I did kind of a peace story with Rick Partlow, Lisa Richmond, and Jeff Haskell, where we all took chapters of kind of an aliens inspired story and did that. So it wasn't quite fully me with that one. It was still fun to do, but this one was fully me. So this one is the anthology Running with Sharp Objects is coming out in mid-December. So excited about that. And then the other thing that I've been working on this week, coming up this weekend, which unfortunately the registration is closed at this point, but SFWA, which is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association, is doing an online conference, and it's part of their Nebula conference, which is an in-person event. They do the Nebula Awards. This one is going to be their first attempt at an online version of that, which is taking place in November. And I was selected to be on a panel talking about mutual resilience for authors, like how authors build community. And that is something I feel pretty strongly about. I've worked in emergency management. I've worked in first response, emergency planning between the Army and then law enforcement, and also in higher education on the day job side. And then I'm also the co-chair of my local writers group. And I've been part of writers groups for a long time. So when we talk about resilience, like one of the things we're going to get into in the panel is like, what does it mean to us? And to me, it's all about building relationships and building connections between people. And I've been doing it long enough that I know it's not just about building relationships. Like sometimes it's about conflict resolution. It's about, growing with people over time. and also changes that take place in people's careers, in groups and things like that. And this is definitely an industry where you can be up and you can be down. So, but yeah, I'm excited to do that. It's going to be this Saturday. So if you're listening, you can't see the image I put up on the screen here, but one of the things that they wanted from us, and this is a lesson I wanted to pass along, was a bio. And I really struggle with writing bios. I don't enjoy writing about myself. It's whatever. It should be better. I should be better at it. There's the kind of bio that just lists facts. There's the kind of bio that maybe is a little more whimsical, the kind of bio that hopefully gets people inspired about your expertise, I guess. And then there's like what I feel are social media bios, like the kind of thing you would see on, for me, Mastodon or Blue Sky, or even, YouTube in this case, or the type that you would see in a book. Well, they asked for bios and pictures, and I sent in one of the bios I just had on social media, which, James Stiegel is a SF author. Actually, they took out, I think, parts of it, in Oregon. And I had like other sentences there, like, I like digging in the yard. I like building stuff. I like riding bikes and reading books. So trying to be a little whimsical there, but the way it came out, like on this, like this is a tile, I guess we're supposed to share with social media, just comes off to me as kind of goofy. And they sent out an email with everybody's, like they had made these, social media tiles that you could share on whatever various channels, and everybody else, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but most of them were a little more professional in this setting. And that's probably the tack that I should have taken. So lesson learned there. I'll probably do something different if I get to take part in this again. And I would recommend like maybe being on a panel focusing more on expertise. James Stiegel is a writer of X number of books and X number of short stories. I haven't run any awards yet, but I'm also chair of the Wordos in Eugene, Oregon. Like, I don't know, things I could say that really speak more to my expertise for this panel. And that's fine. It's not like I'm trying to defend my ability to be there, but if somebody is deciding whether or not they want to attend the conference or pay for it, and they look at this and are like, who is this guy? Why is he qualified to talk about this? I didn't mention my 20 years of emergency management experience or, blah, 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 writers group since 2013. And maybe that's what I should have done. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I worry about it too much. Some people get turned off by a lot of credentials, so maybe this is fine. So anyway, I wanted to share that as kind of a lesson learned and a thing that I'll probably think of more next time. But I'm excited about this. I think it should be fun. And it was actually like really like inexpensive as far as going to a conference and getting a lot of information. It was $50 to attend. And then you get access to the videos for, I think, up to a year. So you could go back and watch everything. Because it's pretty hard for me at this point in my life to attend conferences. I have to really, like, I get maybe, I did 3 this last year, and the family was a little frustrated with me. So next year, I'll probably do 2 at the most. And so an online conference is an opportunity to get you don't get the same sort of face-to-face interaction you would get, which I kind of talked about in the Oricon overview from when I went to Oricon back in October. But you still get a lot of the information, which the panels are always great. And the thing about panels I'll say as well is that the descriptions of panels don't always do them justice. And you never quite know what nugget someone is going to drop in a panel that could just be off the cuff or part of the conversation, or panels sometimes go off the rails and people say wild things. So you never quite know what's going to happen there. I guess the only thing with an online, panel is it gives the organizers the opportunity to take it down if it's bad. So you're not there in the moment watching people yell at George Martin at Worldcon, or fans yell at each other because somebody's yelling at George Martin. That's interesting. But if you couldn't attend the conference, or even if you go to a conference and you can't attend all the programming, this gives you an opportunity to watch everything after the fact. And that's pretty cool, I think. So I'm looking forward to doing more things like this. And also with Sephwa, they have a nonfiction magazine called Planet Side that is a paid, they pay 10 cents a word, which is super cool. And they'll take up to 1,000 words for articles. And John Brazy had posted about it. I was looking at Facebook. I shouldn't have been doing that, but this was a good thing that came out of Facebook because he posted about it. I saw it. I had an idea for an article and, I took 5 minutes to pitch it and they accepted it. So I've got 45 days to write a nonfiction article, or really it's kind of a blog post. It's only 1,000 words about writer decks. And if you don't know what a writer deck is, like that's what I'll get into in the article, but, a writer deck is basically a single purpose writing device that you can buy them. Like typically they're instant on. They basically just go straight to text editing and often have nice or nicer keyboards. And the idea there is that there's nothing in between you and getting the words out. So those exist. There's a lot of different makers of those. Alpha Smart, Astro House, Pomera. And then there are like people making their own, what often they're called cyber decks or writer decks. Like a cyber deck is more of a like general purpose, just computer that somebody has made out of, equipment they have. But then a writer deck would just be more single purpose because the software is very important. And there are people that have also been working on operating systems that don't get in the way. And I'm kind of going into what I'm going to put in the article a little bit here, but increasingly I feel like I've actually just went through and made individual profiles, like users on my main PC for each of the main things I do. So there's like a general use one. And then after that, I made one for writing. I made one for video. And I'm going to make one individually for gaming so that it's all in its own place. Because I'm real tired of opening up Word or sitting down at the computer and just immediately get a bunch of distractions. Like I get so irritated with Word when I get a bunch of pop-ups wanting to show me something. And that's not why I came to Word. I did not come to Word to get a tutorial in Word. I came to it because I had an idea in my head and I wanted to sit down and start writing. And I just hate it that these days I'm so easily distracted by everything that any little thing gets in the way. If the machine is distracting me, and then before I know it, my daughter is knocking on the door because she wants to talk to me about something. And I don't we really try to emphasize like daddy's working, please, when I'm working. And that's another thing. It's like, I don't want to take the finite time I have to work and waste it, surfing Reddit. So one thing I did with the profile, like the writing profile and the video profile, I'm not signed into any of my accounts on the writing profiles or the video profile. And that way it's actually, there's a lot of friction for me to get to any of the stuff that would be distracting. Cause for me, like Reddit is a huge rabbit hole and I need to stay away from that. Hacker news, anything that is basically inviting the internet to give me an endless scroll in my head. I don't want that when I'm trying to work. So that's actually been working pretty well. The only thing I'm running into is if, I need to grab something out of my email so that I can, like, say that art I just put up. I need to go back to the other profile, download it. I've got to share, like, you are able to share OneDrive across all these different profiles. And I haven't checked my license for Office. I was kind of worried I'd be using up licenses, but I think because I'm signed in as the same person, it's basically like being signed into different machines, which I haven't run into licensing problems for that. So that's working. Like I can basically use OneDrive still to sync everything across the profiles, and I can do that. Like that'll work pretty well if I need to share assets and things like that. But that's what a writer deck is kind of all about, right? Like a thing that you can sit down, instantly get to work. If you don't want to buy one of those machines I mentioned, there's also like people working on operating systems and then a movement to basically repurpose old laptops into, this kind of single purpose device. Because oftentimes an old laptop still works perfectly well. It just isn't quite up to the, as operating systems and software gets more and more bloated and the internet gets more and more bloated, it's slowing down what that machine can do. It also used to be that batteries were like a real roadblock. Like once batteries died, like it's very difficult to replace batteries. But we've actually gotten to a place, there's chargers called GAN or GAN chargers that have adjustable voltage, and you can buy adapters. Or even like I've got power banks that will do the same kind of power adaptation that are power adapting that are made for laptops. And I can use that to power an old laptop. So like one of my favorites is a 12-inch Dell from like, I think it came out in 2001, and I'll share it in another video. I don't want to pull it out right now, but I just love the shape of this thing. Like its keyboard is not super great, but it just feels really nice to have my hands on it. And I can just boot that thing to a command line. So basically just a black text screen. And there are a lot of great word processors in that that kind of, operating system setup that you can write in. But there's kind of a whole world out there with being able to repurpose old equipment and reuse it as kind of a single use device. I mean, we've gone from, a thing like a phone that used to be like you go to the phone because you want to talk or answer it. And it's kind of like a mixer, right? You go to the mixer because you want to make pancakes and pancake batter. And then we added all this other stuff onto the mixer. Like it needs Bluetooth connectivity and a clock and a radio and, the ability to chat with friends and blah, blah, blah. When it was really, it's a mixer and I would like to use it as a mixer. And so that's really what I think a lot of people are coming back to with like their music and their media. And we've actually gone back to using a Blu-ray player in the house and watching Blu-rays because there's not all this other distraction and scrolling and watching media on that. Like my daughter can, like I've made Blu-rays for her that she can just put the Blu-ray in the player and boom, there it is. There's none of this. I don't have to worry about other stuff she might be coming across. And I'm finding it to be a lot more satisfying. So it's kind of funny because I'm a person who has always been really excited about tech, and I am still excited about tech. I just am pretty frustrated about where tech has gone and kind of the promise of what these devices were going to do. And they've really just become tracking devices. Like we are the product, and that's pretty frustrating. I don't plan to get into that much in the article, but I kind of just laid out everything I would like to touch on it. And then, how a person could repurpose an old laptop to make it like this and what resources there are. So as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this. I feel like it shouldn't be too hard to write, but I've got 45 days to do that. And the other thing to be mindful of is I'm only going to make, about $100 from this. I've written some other stuff for Cepho before. And, with any writing project, I think you just have to be mindful of how much effort you're putting into it. Obviously, I want it to be as good as it can be, and I will probably put a lot more than $100 worth of effort into it. But yeah, I'm excited about that, and I'll post more when that comes up. Okay, well, this update has gone on longer than I expected it to. What I plan to do this coming week is just focus on continuing to finish this book, and I feel like I'm so close right now. So I have been doing really well with going to bed on time and getting up early. I mentioned that I started Zepbound last Thursday, and I did want to talk about that because I think as a writer, you do need to be aware of, or just a creative, all the things in your life that affect your ability to be able to create. And that can be time, that's health, that's headspace, and, having the freedom, the financial freedom to do it. It's pretty hard to write if you're working 3 jobs, unfortunately. And so that's why I'm mentioning this. Like if, so far it's going pretty well. Like I've been down the rabbit hole on a lot of things about the side effects. I am drinking way more water than I ever would have in the past. I'm trying to drink at least a gallon of water, which I'm not getting close to that. I'm getting almost there. I'm probably drinking 3/4 of a gallon of water a day, and if not other liquids as well. But otherwise I feel pretty good and it seems to be working. So I feel like that's going to be money well spent when it comes down to it. I'm not wanting to eat out as much as I had been, which was a big source of like budget leak for me. And yeah, so far things are going well. I'm still able to get up on time and go to bed. I'm sleeping well, and I feel pretty good about that. So I did sit down at the computer this morning, and it was in the wrong profile, and there were some things on the screen that kind of pulled me into solving those problems for about 10 minutes. And I think next time when I close out for the day on the computer, I'm going to make sure it's in the writing profile or the video profile. So we're just ready to go and there'll be no distractions there. But yeah, I'm getting up in time to basically have time to do a video. That's why this one's going over a little bit. I don't want to do videos that are really, between 20 and 30 minutes by the time everything's said and done, because I need to have a solid hour and a half for writing as well. So, but yeah, so far things are working. And I would like to get 10,000 words done this week, which will get me to 100,000 words on this project. And at that point, we're really in endgame. It needs to not go that much farther over 100,000. So yeah, relatively light week at work. So I think I should be able to make that happen. I need to read stories for my writers group, and I'm excited to do that. And then I'm listening to Holy Fire by Bruce Sterling. And so I'll be able to do a review about that coming up, which is just his world building is just so superb on the idea of life extension and what that might look like when that comes to pass. Like, it will probably come to pass. So yeah, I'm enjoying that so far, but I do have ideas about it. So, yeah, nonfiction wise, I'm still reading The Fiction Writer's Guide to Peace. That one has been kind of a slower go. I'm actually made an audio version of it so I can listen to it, because I haven't had a lot of time to just sit down and read and focus on it. So I'm kind of listening to it and then going back and reading a chapter if there's something I want to follow up on. And I have things to say about that book as well. As a military science fiction writer, I was definitely intrigued by the idea of The Fiction Writer's Guide to Peace. And I think that there are definitely things of value in there for, the general space opera, military science fiction writer, as different ways to approach story and plot and character that I hadn't thought of before. So I'll be interested in sharing that. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out with me, and we'll be checking in with you next week. So I hope I will have good things to say. All right. I'll talk to you later.